What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. Today I'm back on r/EntitledPeople, and I've got for you an unbelievable story to start off proceedings. There are actually 3 updates to this one as well. The most recent coming just a few days ago at the time of recording, but you can tell by the title, it's a pretty crazy story. Asking to use a burial plot that you do not own has got to be up there with one of the most ridiculous requests that I've heard. So without further ado, sit back, relax, make sure you are subscribed to my channel if you're not already, and drop a like on this episode if you go on to enjoy this mental story. Here we go. My sister wants to use a burial plot she doesn't own. My sister, who is a 54-year-old woman, and I, a 63-year-old man, are estranged for a lot of reasons. She was the golden child. I was given a 63 Chevy pickup when I got my driver's license. She got a Mustang convertible. I went to college and she did drugs and had children without marriage. I got student debt. She got a mobile home, which she of course lost due to drugs. She had 2 wonderful kids that we were able to get taken from her, and they're doing well. Our father raised them. My father and mother were divorced in the 1970s, due in part to the stress of my sister. My mother tried to help her. She let her live with her and helped her get jobs, but she always relapsed. So now to the present situation. My father died 4 years ago, and I bought him a nice burial plot in Bozeman, MT. The plot is in my name, and it's in a very nice location in the veterans section. My mother died last summer. I went up and was at the hospital when she died. My sister was nowhere. We were able to reconnect without her. My mum's will stated that my sister and I were supposed to get the house jointly, but somehow she got on the deed by right of survivorship, which meant that she got it. She tried to get me to help pay the remaining mortgage, but that wasn't going to happen, so she had to sell, and I bought it. She was mad and took Mum's remains and disappeared, so we couldn't hold a ceremony. Now, 6 months later, she reappears and says that she's paying for a burial. But here is the catch. My mother is a veteran, so she has a veteran group to pay for the room, the VA for the headstone, and I get a call from the funeral home asking if they bury her with Dad, someone who she was divorced from for 50 years. Okay, so a pretty ridiculous start to this one. As I said, there are 3 updates to this story, so there's going to be a lot more depth here. But I've just got to say, like off the bat, your parents have been divorced for 50 years, but you think they want to be buried together. It's pretty ridiculous, I'm going to be honest. I mean, even if they had a good relationship with each other after they were divorced, like, still no, that's insane. Also, it's not your burial plot, so you just can't do that. But anyway, as I said, 3 more updates to come. Let's get into the first. There is a lot more to this story. So then, the update. Now, this was posted a couple of weeks after the original post. After some research, I offered to pay to enter my mother in the veteran wall. My sister threw a fit. Not directly at me, we don't talk. She just let the funeral home know that she wouldn't return the remains. Sorry, I completely forgot about that. She has the remains and just isn't giving them back. I mean, that really is just mental. Anyway, I would have to buy a new plot, but I just bought a house and I'm furnishing it, so money is tight. She knew that. It was Mum's house and she's mad I bought it. She's driven by several times. I am about to put it out on the short-term rental market. So, after talking to my family, the grandchildren and others, I have thrown in the towel. We are burying Mum in Dad's plot. She will have a I-ground brass marker, it says here. I'm not entirely sure what that is, but there we go. It kills me that my sister has reduced my mum's service to a brass welcome mat to my father's headstone. Oh, okay, I see. My family has said they will know, but dang, it hurts. And my sister cannot take some money from the sale of the house and buy a plot or split the cost with me. Now, the comments below this, and that is the end of the first update, are saying, you are a family member. You can have her moved once it's done, which is interesting because surely she is also, your sister is also a family member. Somebody else has said, just dig her up and put her elsewhere once this has settled down. Your father will thank you. I'm not sure about that. I mean, like, that definitely isn't legal. OP has said to that, good thought. I don't know. But I think the main thing is this comment here. If one of my kids buried me next to a man I divorced 40 years ago, I would haunt the ever-living trash out of them. Folks, this is why it's important to document your final wishes and put someone you can trust in charge. And that, I suppose, is the main point. Let's get into the second update. This was posted just a week ago at the time of recording. Today is the day of the burial. I was going to update afterwards just to say we got it done, but then the last 20 hours hit. My sister cancelled the room at the funeral home and made it a graveside service only. She got a refund for the room. The reason she gave? They are shooting guns for the salutes and that should be outside. I found out when the funeral home called last night to ask me to pick up the urn and take it to the grave. My sister is in a wheelchair and cannot come graveside. I sent the word out on the family message and her son, the only one who talks to her, exploded, as did her daughter. He called and she cried. An honest answer would probably be, I needed drug money and the disability check is days away, but whatever. So I arranged to get a table at a military-themed restaurant in Bozeman. If you're from the area, you know the one, and we'll gather there to tell stories. Just a few minutes ago, I get a call from the funeral home and they were offering a room at a discount, but we're sticking with our plans. Absolutely insane. Cancelling the room at the funeral home to spend the money on whatever, probably drugs, I don't know. Crazy. Anyway, some comments I would like to make, continues OP. Some people think that I'm blaming my sister for becoming addicted to drugs and alcohol at 10. Oh my goodness. I'm not. I blame my parents for moving to a drug-rich area, the government for not handling the drug issue, and the medical establishment for not seeing addiction as the disease it was at the time. My post would be much longer if I went into the social and political issues of the late 70s and early 80s and how it broke up the nuclear family. I blame my parents for trying to buy her good behaviour and a recession for the stress that ended their marriage. They also never forced her to finish school, which limited her ability to succeed. I blame her for wasting the multiple opportunities she was given as an adult. She was given a car, repossessed, a mobile, lost because she spent the welfare money on drugs instead of space rent, a truck, partially restored 63 Chevy C10, sold for drug money, lost custody of 2 kids who have turned out well. This list doesn't include the money she's taken from people over the years. As far as this funeral goes, my mother would have been buried in her home state of Pennsylvania near her family in September if my sister hadn't raked her remains and disappeared. Okay, and now let's get into the final update so far. I've obviously not read this, but something tells me that there's going to be more to this story unless this is a very definitive third update. But this was posted 5 days ago. The service was Thursday at 1, and the American Legion Gallatin Valley Post 14, I hope I pronounced that correct, did the final salute with the rifle volley and taps. The Navy sent an officer and enlisted to do the flag presentation. I told them about her service and said some words to the people who came, but being in a snow-covered field limited who could come. Afterwards, we met at a restaurant and told stories. The grandkids were really interested in what kind of mother she was, and they were surprised when we told them she drove a motorcycle to work. Now, I'm sure you're interested as to what happened with my sister. When I arrived at the funeral home, I was shocked to find what little she'd arranged. I drove her remains to the gravesite and my brother actually put them into the ground. At my dad's funeral, we arranged for a hearse to take his remains up to the cemetery. It was a little funny. Me, my wife, my brother and my mum's urn took a quick drive down Main Street, Bozeman so we could say goodbye before hitting the cemetery. Well, while the ceremony was going on, an SUV came up. It was my sister watching from the road. I arranged for the flag to go to my brother since I had my dad's flag. I could see her shouting as he was presented the flag. After that, we each said something over the grave and headed to our cars. My sister called her son over and handed him 2 bags containing vials of mum's ashes, one for him and one for my niece. At the restaurant, they gave them to me and my brother. They are great kids. She then drove by yelling at me for ruining the ceremony or something, then drove off. So that's it until summer, when we'll decide to either move mum to Pennsylvania to be with her family, my brother is looking into that issue, or a national cemetery, or we scatter her ashes. Now, I would like to address some comments made before we end this. 1, why am I short-term renting the house? Well, my initial plan was long-term rental until my wife and I retired in 2 to 3 years. But my son, while working on the house, has fallen in love with Montana and wants to move up at the end of summer. so we're short-term renting until then. I've met with some neighbours and given them my contact information in case a client gets out of hand. The house is near ski and outdoor adventure activities, so I don't see a problem. Number 2, I do not blame my 10-year-old or 13-year-old sister. It is the 30-plus-year-old woman who never took the opportunities to get straight seriously. I also blame my parents, but they paid with their marriage and the fact they never had the retirement they wanted. I also blame the government, but that's a major rant. And 3, why didn't I take her kids? Well, I tried, but in California, they will fight to keep the kids with a bad mother. My wife and I would buy groceries and take them to them. I took the kids to the dentist, but we were limited to what we could do. And she knew if she gave up the kids, she would lose a bargaining chip. It was a cloak and dagger operation to get the kids to Montana and then in front of a judge that finally saved them. Okay, there we go. That is it for the story so far, and I'm not quite sure where to start. I feel like OP has sort of said along similar lines to what I would say in terms of his sister's drug addiction and just his sister as an entity in this story. There's not too much more that I would say differently to what he said. I mean, look, drug addiction is a disease, obviously, as he said. It's extremely serious, and I don't think it would be right if we just sat here and blamed his sister for being such a terrible person because of this drug addiction. However, that is not to say that they should just get off with everything they've ever done in their life either. And yeah, how they've acted for decades has been terrible. And of course, they are to blame in part for that, despite the addiction. So now that that's been dealt with, and if you have differing views, fair play, get them in the comments. I do want to just talk briefly about how she acted at the funeral. Now, obviously, it's not funny, right? A funeral of anyone. But I just have an image in my head of just a really crazy lady just doing drive-bys at a funeral, hurling abuse out the window, saying, "You're ruining this. This is terrible." And then, like, the fact that she's given vials of her mum's ashes to her grandkids or whatever, or to your niece and nephew, sorry, and they've just given them to you and your brother is so good. I mean, they do seem like great kids, but phenomenal. Yeah, I mean, like, here you go, kids. Some vials of your grandma's ashes. That same grandma that I've just been, hiding from everyone and keeping all her remains. You can keep these, and they just run off and give them to their uncles. I mean, just unbelievable. But yeah, I don't know. Sometimes in these really serious stories, you just have to find a little bit of joy. Not very funny, but sort of like more funny, as in odd. But there we go. I mean, that is it for now. Maybe we're gonna get an update in the summer, because I feel like, yeah, there really is more to this story. I don't think that your mum, OP, is gonna stay there. It just doesn't feel like we have a resolution yet. So I'm really interested and intrigued to see what happens next. But there we go. That is it for the story. Now, we do actually have time for one more story separate to this one. But yeah, I'm excited to see what happens next in that one. Let's get into the final story of this episode. Aunt tries to ruin my wedding. I'm getting married tomorrow, and my narcissistic aunt just tried to ruin my wedding by creating chaos, because what else would she do? This aunt has a long history of accepting invitations to events and then creating some elaborate story days or sometimes hours before not to come. However, she seemed excited enough this time, and I thought maybe it was an important enough milestone for me, so she will finally show up. Doesn't get that much more important than a wedding, I must say. Keep in mind, I've been talking to her about the wedding frequently. She showed me her dress, asked for directions to find the venue, asked me to invite her sons. Originally, only she was invited because I don't have a strong enough relationship with them, and because it's a small wedding. We invited her months ago, and until yesterday, I would never have guessed what has transpired in the last 24 hours. My aunt messaged me to ask me to invite her mother, a very ill and fragile lady who is 92 years old. I said yes, and that I need to check with the venue to accommodate her. Her mum uses a wheelchair, and she travels with a nurse, so it wouldn't only be her, but also the nurse that I had to make room and get food for. I spent hours trying to figure things out with the venue folks. Keep in mind, this is happening 2 days before the wedding. Goodness me, so you're probably nervous and stressed enough. And now you're dealing with this. I genuinely cannot think of many things worse within the context of planning and getting ready for your own wedding than doing this. There's no way I'd have the patience for this. I would just say, no, look, you're invited. If you don't want to come, fine. I'm not dealing with this. That's actually insane. What a crazy thing to ask just 2 days before the wedding. Anyway, After that initial message, she then said, No, sorry for asking. It was rude for me to ask you that so close to the date. She went silent, didn't answer messages or phone calls for more than 12 hours, but then sent a message to the group chat with all the guests saying she wouldn't attend, but saying nothing to me directly. I messaged her again thinking something bad must have happened. I was actually so worried about her. Okay, so you've now put in the work trying to accommodate her mum and of course her nurse, but then she's actually said out of nowhere, no, don't worry, she doesn't need to come anymore. Great, thank you. Then she finally replies back and tells me that she's deeply offended that I couldn't tolerate anyone making her beg for her mum to attend any event. She's never had to beg, by the way. Oh, and she adds that she still loves me, but that it was a very rude thing for me to do, even when I was told by her before many times of the fragile state of her mum and how difficult it was for her to be outside. I told her that I was trying to be mindful of her condition and that it was a very hurtful thing to do. I was disappointed of her actions. She then proceeded to tell me that I was closed-minded and that she was not going to attend because I didn't deserve her presence, and that I was, quote, not that young anymore. How is that relevant? I don't know, but it's just one of those things, you know, when you've lost an argument or you just know you're in the wrong and you just think of any sort of insult to say to try and get back at somebody, even though you know you've completely lost the situation. That is what I've gained from that. I should be sleeping right now, but I needed to write this down somewhere to make sense of what happened. And guys, don't worry, there's an update to this one, which we're going to get straight into. It comes after the wedding. The wedding, you'll be glad to know, was a great success. I was crying tears of joy the whole time because our friends and family surprised us more than once with gifts and gestures to show their love. I'm not a very extroverted person when it comes to throwing parties, and this experience of planning a wedding had me very anxious. Yeah, I'm not surprised, but the result exceeded any expectations. I write this from my bed while I'm sore all over from so much dancing and laughing. As for the toxic aunt, I sent her a single message, goodbye. After that, I blocked her everywhere possible and I showed my family the messages. They all told me to send her to heck together. And there she'll stay, more alone than she already is, with her lies and her poison. I don't even wish her ill, I just don't have any more time to waste on abusive people. Thank you for all the comments that I received on the post. I felt mentally at peace enough to completely forget about her. Thanks all for your empathy and kind words. Yeah, now that is very good to hear. I'm going to be honest, like, I'm the sort of person, and I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. It probably is a bad thing. I don't know. I'll get into why I think it might be a bad thing or maybe a good thing in a second, but I'm the sort of person that would just be like, I cannot be bothered, as I sort of mentioned during the first post there, I cannot be bothered with somebody like this. It's not worth the effort. You're causing me so much anxiety and stress that I do not need in the days leading up to my wedding. Just sack them off immediately. So by saying goodbye, I think that was the exact right thing to do. And look, even if you don't feel great saying it, sometimes you got to do things for yourself. It is your wedding at the end of the day. And I definitely think you made the right decision. So also thanks to the people of Reddit for telling OP just to say, now you're done, bye, you're not invited anymore. Nobody's invited. Well, people are invited. Nobody from, you know, your toxic aunt's sort of group is invited. Now, what I mean by what I just said before is that I know a lot of people out there that are people pleasers. Seems like a relatively negative word. I know people that would struggle to do this and would go to silly sort of places to sort out someone like this, even though they're clearly a horrible person, but they would do it just because they are so nice and generous and I suppose accommodating. Now, get in the comments down below, what do you think? Because, you know, maybe you are one of those people. Do you think it's a detriment to your character to sometimes do this? The way I see it is you're just a very generous and kind person, but I see a lot of like shorts and videos where people are saying how not to be a people pleaser, how to say no, which is something that I've never struggled with, you can probably tell. But in the same way that sometimes I think, oh, wouldn't it be good to be as selfless as possible or much more kind, I know from friends that it's not always a good thing. And sometimes their inability to say no is a big negative. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below. Food for thought at the end of this one. Food for thought, indeed. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you want more right away, click that. And if you're on a podcast platform, then sorry, you can't see my lovely Mauritian top, which is a real shame because I'm called to Mauritian. RIP my granddad. And you can't see the video I just pointed to. that's your loss. Catch you on the next one.